The public is naive to a lot of stuff. There was a plan already to do something to it. They were trying to kill me too, because Lando wasn't even the shooter, you know? And the other thing is for Biggie, son, I was in jail, like I'm in jail now. Of course, you the authorities know what happened. They saw the first one, they saw the second one. It's the same people, same circle of people.
In multiple prison interviews since being incarcerated, Suge Knight has spoke on the deaths of both Tupac and Biggie. We've covered each one separately, but for this video, we're going to combine the two with more information to give a broader scope into Suge Knight's claims while in prison.
Monday, Shakur went before the bench, accused of shooting and wounding two off-duty police officers.
They said the police had me first to kill me. 3 weeks after that,
Tupac in late 1993 was filming the movie Above the Rim. The movie soundtrack was produced by Death Row Records, which was headed by Suge Knight, who was just coming off the success of his artist Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg, which generated over $150 million for the label.
Very first year, I generated $150 million.
Suge Knight was trying to get Tupac to sign to Death Row Records at this time, but Tupac told him he wasn't ready, and he paid him a few $100,000 for him to make a song for the soundtrack of a film which Dr. Dre was directing called Murder Was the Case.
The soundtrack for Murder Was the Case? Yeah. It was like the most I ever got for a song. Yeah. It was like $150,000 for one song.
Tupac used the money to pay for legal fees as he caught a case in October of 1993 for shooting two off-duty police officers in Atlanta.
They said the police had me first to kill me.
One of the officers is also charged in the case.
Tupac, who played a role in Above the Rim, was filming the movie in Harlem, New York. While in New York, Tupac would hang out with rapper Biggie Smalls, who had gotten signed to East Coast label Bad Boy Records, headed by Puff Daddy. Tupac met a New York gangster by the name of Haitian Jack on the set of Above the Rim. Haitian Jack and another gangster by the name of King Tut were stick-up guys who would rob people to make a living. Haitian Jack and King Tut, after meeting Tupac on the set for Above the Rim, were trying to get him to sign to Bad Boy Records, as they were allegedly extorting New York executive producers for money, so would have had control over Tupac. Tupac refused. Then he was allegedly set up in a misconduct case with Haitian Jack becoming his co-defendant. This same circle of people was believed to be behind Mike Tyson's incarceration setup in 1992, as both Mike Tyson and Tupac's case of 1993 were not only the same charges, but also the same circle of people involved.
They know what goes on in this man. Michael Tyson and all that. You know, they know what goes on.
Before, with Haitian Jack being his co-defendant. However, Haitian Jack had a separate trial from Tupac, where Haitian Jack got off with the crime, and Tupac started to believe that Haitian Jack was a snitch, with there being rumors of him being a confidential informant for the FBI. Tupac spoke about this on November 29th, 1994, while outside the courthouse, he spoke on the odd details about the case, tying it into Haitian Jack and a gang called the A-Team in New York, who had connections to New York drug trafficker Jimmy Henchman.
Where are those people that did this? They were all in the same hotel as me. They were all right in the same room as me. Why am I the only one in court right now?
Tupac, on the following day of November 30th, 1994, received a message on his pager from Jimmy Henchman, which told him to go to Quad Recording Studio in New York within Manhattan to collect $7,000 for a feature verse. Puff Daddy's former bodyguard Eugene Dill revealed that Puffy was also at the studio with Jimmy Henchman as he was overseeing Biggie Smalls, as he was hosting his group Junior Mafia's first ever studio session for the song Players Anthem. When Tupac arrived at the studio, he was shot 5 times with bullets being lodged in the back of his skull, and it was later revealed that Jimmy Henchman paid a man by the name of Dexter Isaac and King Tut to shoot Tupac.
Doctor's affidavit showed exit wounds in the front of the skull. That was a clear murder attempt.
Puff Daddy was with Jimmy Henchman during the time of the setup, and Tupac confronted Puffy and Biggie at the studio while he was shot, as he believed they had foreknowledge of it about to take place. This caused a rift between Tupac and Biggie and Puffy.
Pac ended up going to New York, he ended up getting shot up. I said to my bulletproof vest with the Death Row logo on the back and said, don't get scared now.
Tupac, on the following day, on December 1st, 1994, was convicted on the case with Haitian Jack, where he was sentenced to 4 years in prison. Ayanna Jackson, who pressed charges against Tupac, later claimed it was a setup, but she was being threatened by gangsters to set up Tupac, and she feared for her life, where she called her lawyer straight after to begin a civil suit, before she had even phoned the police to report Tupac, as this was part of the setup, to attempt to extort money out of Tupac, then split it up with the co-conspirators.
She can make millions if she do it right. If she gets some guys and they all plan it, and that's exactly what they did.
Some have come to believe true, then this could have been a much bigger scheme put into play to get Tupac locked up, which Tupac believed himself. While Tupac was in prison, Biggie released Who Shot Ya on February 21st, 1995, which was seen as a diss record towards Tupac, which only increased tension between the two. Tupac, hearing the song in prison, was then told by inmates that Biggie's homeboys were bragging about shooting him. Suge Knight began to visit Tupac in prison, and the beef was then taken to the next level by Suge Knight in 1995.
With him. And one other thing I like to say, any artist out there want to be an artist and want to stay a star, and won't have to worry about the executive producer trying to be all in the video, all on the record, dancing. Come to Death Row.
Suge Knight started to visit Tupac in prison with criminal defense attorney David Kenner and his head of security, former Compton cop Reggie Wright Jr. Reggie Wright Jr. was a former Compton cop and son of Reggie Wright Sr., who was the head of the gang division in Compton Police Department. Reggie Wright Jr. was given $300,000 by Suge Knight to start Right Ways Protective Services, which supplied police security for the label. This was after Reggie Wright Sr. caught wind of a plot where Compton Blood gang members were going to kidnap Suge Knight to then hold him for ransom. Suge Knight, Reggie Wright Jr. and David Kenner started to visit Tupac in prison in 1995, where David Kenner began working on an appeal to get him released from prison. In August of 1995, the Source Awards took place in Madison Square Garden in New York. While there, and while accepting an award, Suge Knight gave a shout out to Tupac as he knew he was about to sign him. Right after giving Tupac the shout out, he then went on to diss Puff Daddy and Bad Boy Records, hinting that Biggie should sign to Death Row.
What I said at the Source Award was true. Till today, Puffy still dancing in the videos.
Suge Knight, a month later, went to a party in Atlanta with Jake Robles in Los Angeles. Puff Daddy was also at the same party as Suge Knight, and a confrontation broke out where Jake Robles was shot and died a week later in hospital. Kirk Burroughs, the former president of Bad Boy Records, claimed in a federal lawsuit that Puff Daddy had sanctioned the murder of Jake Robles.
Jake had words with somebody, and then all of a sudden, they kick everybody outside the club, and I think Jake's thing was more of a setup job.
Puffy, now having blood on his hands when it came to Suge Knight and the Bloods in LA, had already formed a relationship with the Southside Compton Crips, being the rivals of the Bloods within Los Angeles and Compton. A shot caller for the Southside Compton Crips called Keefy D was introduced to Puff Daddy between 1993 and 1994 by a New York drug trafficker called Eric Zip Martin. Puffy began in giving the Southside Crips tickets to his events when he would perform in LA to protect himself from the Bloods. Tupac Shakur was bailed out of prison under David Kenner's appeal in October of 1995, where he began in making music under Death Row Records. Kevin Hackey, who was Reggie Wright Jr.'s former police partner, had now taken on the role as an undercover FBI asset after being approached by the FBI and ATF to go undercover, posing as a bodyguard. Hackey was assigned to bodyguard Tupac undercover and collect information for the FBI about any crimes going on within the label. Tupac, as part of being released on the appeal, had to take on David Kenner as his entertainment lawyer, which became a conflict of interest as he was not only the entertainment lawyer, but also the criminal defense attorney for the label's artists. Death Row were in New York, with Funkmaster Flex then giving out their location over the radio. Snoop Dogg's trailer was then shot up on December 16th, 1995, and bodyguard Frank Alexander got them out of New York, returning to LA to finish filming the video. Suge Knight shortly after this held a Christmas party in the Hollywood Hills, where music producer Mark Anthony Bell attended, who was associated to Puff Daddy. Suge Knight and Tupac locked Mark Anthony Bell inside a room and beat him with champagne bottles, demanding that he give over the addresses of Puffy's family within Los Angeles, and the word soon got back to Puffy. Puffy, a few days after this, flew out to Los Angeles to perform at the Anaheim Coliseum in Los Angeles. While there, Keefe D claims Puffy met with him, along with the Southside Crips being backstage, where he allegedly spoke on wanting to get rid of the problem of Tupac and Suge Knight. Lil Cease, being an artist under Biggie's group Junior Mafia, confirmed this during a police interview, where he identified the Southside Crips as being backstage during the Anaheim concert. The Soul Train Music Awards took place on March 29, 1996 at the Shrine Auditorium in Los Angeles. Suge Knight and Tupac run into Puffy and Biggie, and Puffy's former bodyguard Eugene Dill confirmed that Puffy had ran away when he saw them approaching, following a confrontation which happened outside the venue. Eugene Dill claimed after this, Puffy said out of frustration that he didn't care if Tupac had to die, he didn't care if Biggie had to die, and he didn't care if Suge Knight had to go to jail. He was just tired of living his life in fear. Keefe D's nephew, Southside Crip Orlando Anderson, during this time, attempted to snatch the death row chain off of Suge Knight's associate and blood gang member Trayvon Lane while inside a Foot Locker store while in the Lakewood Mall in California. Puffy was tied into a rumor on the streets of Compton, which claimed he was offering a bounty on death row chains, causing Orlando Anderson to try and snatch it, with Puffy having a relationship with the Southside Crips. Tupac made Hit 'Em Up being a diss track towards Puffy and Biggie in May of 1996, with it being released in June. The music video used impersonators of Biggie and Puffy, and in the track, Tupac claimed to have slept with Biggie's wife, Faith Evans. Keefe D claims after this he met with Puffy in the Greenblatt Stele in Los Angeles in the summer of